Hi, and welcome to another episode of Tom Kennedy Science, and I'm your host, Dr. Tom Kennedy. Now today, what we're going to talk about is the genetic code. You know, in the 1950s, these guys, Watson and Crick, they were really smart. They were probably smarter than me, but they walked into Eagle Pub and said, "Hey, we found the secret to life." No, you found the structure of DNA, right? They discovered the double helical structure of DNA. The secret to life that they were talking about wasn't so much the structure of DNA, although that was important and that was a great achievement in science history, was figuring out how DNA looks, but it was also deciphering the genetic code. How does four nucleotides, adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, code for every living organism on this planet? So that's the genetic code. That was discovered back in the 1960s as well. And the genetic code is a sequence of nucleotides that codes for amino acids. You start to see the connection here, right? Proteins are the workhorses of life. We use proteins for so many different things, and proteins also are enzymes, and enzymes make molecules or break down molecules we need. So even though DNA doesn't code for a pigment like melanin or anthocyanin, which is what makes blueberries blue, it doesn't code to how to make a lipid or a cholesterol molecule. But what it does do is carry the information to make the enzymes and regulate those enzymes and those metabolic pathways that do make pigments and all these other molecules we need. And it also makes the enzymes that we use to break down these molecules as well. So how do they do this, right? How does this genetic code work? Well, let's think about this. There are 20 amino acids. Well, we use 4: adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. So if I did 2 nucleotides, well, that's 4 times 4, which is 16. That's still not 20. But what if I do 3 nucleotides in a row? That's a codon. So I got 4 times 4 is 16, times another 4, that's 64. Okay, so if I've got 20 amino acids, that puts me right at about 3 codons for each amino acid. And that's what we see. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So a codon is a sequence of 3 nucleotides that codes for a specific amino acid. That is the genetic code. That is the code of life. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, there are only 61 codons. I know, there's 64 possible combinations, but there are 3 codons like UGA. Wait a second, did I just say U instead of A, T, G, or C? Yeah. You see, when we transcribe, which is something we're going to talk about, when you copy the information in DNA to RNA, you probably already know RNA doesn't use thymine, it uses uracil. And because of that, instead of having a thymine in there, it's got a U, a uracil instead. So like UGA, uracil, guanine, adenine, those 3 in a row are an example of one of the 3 stop codons that tell translation, which is we're actually making the proteins inside of a ribosome, to stop making it. Okay, so there's our genetic code, right? Here's some more interesting things about the genetic code. First of all, it's redundant. And you already know that, right? I mean, think about it. Redundant. Let's look at the amino acid, I don't know, alanine. I'm looking at my chart. Yeah, alanine. Okay, here's how it's redundant. As long as you've got guanine and cytosine, no matter what that third position is, it could be uracil, adenine, thymine, cytosine, doesn't matter. As long as you've got GC, you'll get the amino acid, gotta keep looking at alanine. That is redundancy. That means there are 4 codons for that one amino acid. Now, some amino acids like methionine only have 1 codon, some only have 2, so there's redundancy in our genetic code. All right, next, the genetic code is also unambiguous. What that means is the same codon will always code for the same amino acid everywhere. So if I have GCU, it will always code for the same amino acid, alanine. Now here's a third thing about the genetic code that's so important. The genetic code is also nearly universal. I say nearly. There are some bacteria out there that do have a slightly different genetic code, but that's derived. I mean, that's not ancestral. That has changed since the origins of life, and we think it's a way to evade viruses from taking over. So the genetic code is nearly universal. That means we could take a gene, which is a sequence of nucleotides with all of their codons, the code for amino acids to form a protein. It's the same. So if I've got a gene to code for something like insulin, and I take those genes out of a human and put them in a bacteria, the bacteria will make the exact same protein. That's wild. So the genetic code is universal for all living organisms. It's like, another way to think about the genetic code is this. You got millions of different species on this planet. Millions, right? I mean, think of all the different animals, from insects and birds and fish and plants. Oh, plants aren't animals, right? And then we can also talk about plants and fungus and bacteria and algae and the slime on your teeth in the morning from those bacteria growing on it. Yeah, the genetic code is the same for all of them. And that really points to our common ancestry. That genetic code evolved billions of years ago, has been inherited unchanged ever since. Now, one more thing that I just want to rehash here with the genetic code is this. The genetic code, like I said, is a sequence of nucleotides. You've got 4 letters. Those letters come together to make words, which are the codons. Words come together, of course, to make a paragraph. Paragraph could be thought of as a protein. And then you have an entire genome, which tells a story. And that story could be the code for an animal like you and me. So we would have about 20,000 genes that are used to code the code for everything we need to make a human. One other connection I'd also like to make. Think about this. DNA has what is called a primary structure. Now, primary just means first, right? So the primary structure of DNA is just the sequence of the nucleotides, the sequence of A's, T's, G's, and C's, like G, A, T, T, A, C, A, Gattaca. It's a great movie from the 90s you should probably watch about genetic engineering. Any rate, the primary structure of DNA carries that information, just like letters form words that carry information as well. It's the same thing, except remarkably, whereas the English language requires on 26 letters and thousands of words, life uses 4 letters and 61 words. Actually, 64 because you got the punctuation, which is the stop codons. The other thing is primary structure, sequence of nucleotides. Okay, what are proteins made of? Proteins are made up of amino acids, and a protein also has a primary structure. Can you guess this? The primary structure of a protein is a sequence of amino acids. So that sets up these processes known as transcription and translation, which are very important because transcription is where we copy the information from our DNA onto an RNA molecule, right? It's just like copying your mom's cookbook, right? Just copy down all the recipes. And then translation means I'm going to take the information in that messenger RNA, which is stored in a sequence of nucleotides, and I'm going to translate that into a sequence of amino acids. I'm going to do that using a ribosome. Okay, now a ribosome is like the universal translator, right? Or a babblefish. Everybody gets that one. The answer is always 42, right? No, just kidding. But a babblefish, or a universal translator from Star Trek can take a language like English and translate that into another language. A ribosome takes the sequence of nucleotides, translates that into a sequence of amino acids. And that is the basis of gene expression. And I'm going to talk about gene expression in my next video, where we're going to talk about operons.